Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Here Be Dragons. I am your host, as always, Stephen Stark, and joining me, as usual, is John. Nessie is working this week, being a respiratory therapist and saving lives. So we miss you, Nessie. Come back as soon as you can. Next week, I think. But we're also very happy to have joining us today for the first time, Laura P. Laura, just say hi to the folks and tell everybody, a little bit about yourself, as much or as little as you want.
Sure. I'm Laura. I am a friend of John's and a recent new friend of Steven's. Hardcore Alien franchise film, hence me being here today. Live just outside of New York City and just love watching movies and being able to talk about them. So excited to be here.
Right on, right on. Well, as you say, you've known John for a couple years now, right?
Mm-hmm.
John, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's just been great. We actually befriended each other through the Game of Owns podcast. And then we met up for the first time at the very first Con of Thrones. And we've had the pleasure, or I've had the pleasure of hanging out with her for all three conventions. And it's just been great. And it's been a joy to me now that she's, joined the fold, so to speak, and been part of our group. It's just been really exciting. And I'm so happy to have you here, Laura.
Thank you. That's very kind.
And as far as new friend goes, Laura is in my D&D group now, playing a wizard. No, you're a rogue. You're a rogue. I'm getting my folks crossed. Amy and Leaf are my wizards, but yeah. Anyway, people are very happy to see you too. We got a lot of the regulars in the chat today, so let's just say hi to some folks real quick, and then we'll start talking about a movie. I see Muhammad and Leaf. Leaf is always here every time. If she wasn't here, I would wonder what was wrong. We got Dan from Voice of Geekdom, who's doing some great stuff for the Silmarillion. You guys go check out his channel. Jess Britvek is here. Ridiculous Ed Tollett, a.k.a. Sean. Danny McKay. I see Amy Blackfire, who is doing some stuff on her YouTube channel, too. You should go check that out. Good A Song of Ice and Fire and Chinese mythology stuff. Who else? Micah Clark. Micah never gets to be here live. You're always working. So glad you're here right now, my man. AK-47 in the house. Kate Bertinsky. Stephanie Frederick. Jolie, of course, my mom. Anna Iglesias and Wheezy Squeezebox. I think I got everybody. That's quite a few folks watching right now. But yeah, thanks so much for joining us. Today we will be talking about the film Aliens, the plural. If you want a really great conversation about the singular, just a couple of days ago, John on his channel had a really great conversation with Carol Brown about Alien from 1979. This is Aliens from 1986, directed by James Cameron. John, Laura, you guys are both big fans of this. I really enjoy it, but you guys are the bigger fans, so I'm going to let you guys just take it from here and go ahead.
Did you want to go first, Laura? Or
go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, it's funny. My appreciation of this movie has increased over time because I'm much more of a Ridley Scott fan than I am a James Cameron fan, and so I think that this sort of creepy horror of Alien, it kind of appeals to me a bit more. James Cameron, is just in a completely different category where his film is basically the sledgehammer to Ridley Scott's scalpel. But that's okay, because I think what's so great about these two films is that they are so different, even though they share a certain DNA. It's great that they're so totally different. And I think that's why Aliens has gone down as one of the all-time greatest sequels, because it does have an identity onto itself. And I just found myself smiling, ear to ear today when I was watching the film. And it's just it's just outrageously fun. It's not the scares, but you can't help but, I imagine if I had seen it in theaters when I was young, well, maybe not. I would have been pretty young at the time, 2 years old. But if I had maybe been a bit older and I saw it in the theaters, I think I would have been mixed between like hiding behind my hands, but also grinning ear to ear, because it's just that kind of movie.
I agree. And I think that's one of the reasons why I've always appreciated Aliens more than the original film. And I think it's rare that a sequel can outdo an original, but I really think that they did it here. And I think one of the biggest things too is what John said. Yes, you have a lot of commonalities with you're fighting aliens, but in Aliens, you're doing it in a way that's fun and comedic and hilarious at times, despite the danger. Whereas the first one was just constant, I guess, seriousness and grimness. But Aliens, in the writing and just in the acting and line delivery in a lot of different ways, brings about like a real comedic element to it that just made it a really fun, albeit scary film to watch.
Yeah, I think that James Cameron or somebody in the documentary said that actually I think it was David Giler, the producer, who said that Alien had more like sort of gore and sort of the disturbing factor, and Aliens has like it terrorizes the audience kind of as well. Even though there are laughs, it's sort of like it's a thrill ride as opposed to making you want to throw up, kind of like the first one does.
Yeah, I think that's probably why, and I'm agreeing with Alicia Kingston. Aliens is my favorite in the franchise, this film. And it's hard for me to fully articulate why, I think. I mean, it's a 35-year-old movie, but it holds up really well. Some of the effects are a little dated here and there, but for overall, the monster effects still look great. I have one main complaint about the film, and it's going to be like a complaint I have about a lot of stuff. The military sequences don't make sense to me.
Yeah, and James Cameron even acknowledges that in the commentary, where he says, yeah, we got the way the military operates wrong, and sort of the chain of command and, all that type of stuff. It's not really accurate. So I like the fact that he acknowledges that, but also I'm able to give myself over to this being a, science fiction fantasy film, basically. So it is what it
doesn't break my immersion, though. Like, I still had a great time with this film, and it's because, honestly, it's because of the characters. The characters in this movie are what really make it. Hicks is awesome. Ripley is like a quintessential badass. Hudson is just hilarious from start to finish. Oh gosh, what's her name?
Vasquez.
God dang it.
Yeah.
And I really like that they have both Vasquez and Ripley in this film, so you can see there's really almost a dichotomy, because Vasquez is very masculinized to the point that, Bill Paxton even makes the joke, "Have you ever been mistaken for a man?" Nobody ever mistook Ripley for a man, but she was a badass anyway. But I appreciate that they showed both of those things, and I'm seeing a lot of love for Vasquez in the chat, and rightly so. She's awesome. Like, she's hardcore, but like, she is a very masculinized type of character.
Yeah. Sorry, I was about to. you were discussing the characters, and I think that's one of the key differences about this film is that I think in Alien the characters feel very sort of like real people, and which is not, that sounds like an insult to this film. It's not, but the characters in this are almost more like they're kind of larger than life, almost comic book characters, and which is why a lot of them are so fun.
Like I guess maybe they almost feel like archetypes, and an archetype can serve as a useful metaphor a lot of times too. It's like I'll get into the polarizers stuff eventually, but that character adds a depth to this movie that it wouldn't have without him. I mean, as much as you want to hate him and strangle him and blow him out an airlock, you name it, the movie doesn't work the same without him.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just go to your initial point. I just want to strangle him the whole time. He's great, but he's such a slimy little jerk.
We want to talk about slimy little jerks. We have to get to Carter Burke at some point because, oh, what a sleazeball in this movie. And yet you get a glimpse of it early on. Like, he's not going to be like a stand-up dude, but just as it progresses and you see more and more come out, what a repulsive human being.
Yeah. And I think more than even representing just the company, Burke represents like rampant capitalism at its worst. Like he becomes a theme in the movie, which is why I think it would be less without him, because it shows us what corporate greed really looks like and the type of things it leads to. Like, oh, we can't blow this place up. It's worth too much money. We could make money off these aliens. He's only worried about the wealth. And I think I think James Cameron is saying something about that in this film with that character.
Yeah. It's almost comical how quickly he becomes very, I mean, not to say he isn't transparent from the first moment he steps on screen, but he goes from, promising Ripley that, the only goal is to wipe them out. And then almost as soon as they get there, he's like, no, this is an important species. We have to think about this for a second. And it's like,
a company man, but don't let that fool you.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, when we find out that he was the one that sent the colonists on LV-426 to check out this derelict ship, knowing that aliens were there, knowing that it was probably going to likely lead to most, if not all of them dying. And I think we said the number was like 157 colonists and families and small children that were there, but he did it anyway, just because he was interested in just getting a paycheck for himself as well as for the company. And we see that evident. And then even later on in the film, when he's trying to sabotage Ripley and the young child in this movie, Newt, just for the sake of, again, just self-greed, preservation, just he was always a him man, and he portrayed himself well as wanting to do right by the colonists there, but it was definitely all about him and just money.
Oh yeah, he's a smiley glad hands, He'll shoot you that winning smile, and he'll shake your hand, and he'll grip it real tight, and he'll tell you whatever you want to hear. But then, he's going to do whatever it takes to get what he wants. It's that sort of like double dealing that he does throughout the whole film. And, it leads to his death eventually. Spoiler alert, pretty much everybody dies. It's a horror movie, y'all. Like, not a lot of people make it out of horror movies in general.
Yeah, and the film starts off with Ripley, and Jonesy having been the only survivors of, of the previous film. So that things probably aren't going to go too well for most
people. Even from that scene, that opening scene, like, one thing I really noticed that to me said, yeah, this movie was made in the 80s, is how slow the pace is. But like, that's a very intentional choice in order to build the suspense slowly throughout the film, which I think he does really masterfully. Like, we don't even see the creature itself until an hour into the film. And that's a creature we already know what it looks like from the first film. So, like, I really like the way he continued to just, like, slowly changing between scenes instead of quick cuts to anything. It really lets you just sit there and stew in what might be around the corner. Is something going to pop up? Yeah, Carol agrees with me. Loves the slow pacing, but that's not something you really see used in film that much anymore.
Yeah, and you know, I'm going to talk about the music. The music contributes to that as well, because I mean, even though there are some bursts of like real busy string use in the beginning of the film when Ripley is having her nightmare, for the most part, for like the first hour of the film, the music is very sparse. It's, you know, kind of sort of some gentle like dum 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 in the background when they're like walking through the compound to add some tension. But really, it's a lot of silence, letting that pacing really draw out to make you uneasy. And it isn't until the aliens full on attack and Ripley goes into basically savior mode when the music cranks up and it's like wall-to-wall action music for the rest of the film. So I feel like that's obviously very deliberate, both in terms of I think it's deliberate in terms of the pacing of the film and keeping you on edge, but also in terms of her character as well. You can take it that way as well. It's when she takes control of the situation, that's when the music kicks in.
And the music definitely matches the overall ups and downs of the film as well, because most horror films, I think, have like a, you know, you start off slow, then you're slowly like building towards like a climactic moment, the horror moment happens, and then it dies down and you get your resolution. But Aliens is just a constant roller coaster up and down of just a horror moment, and then hang on, let's plan and regroup, and what's going to be our next step, and then another horror moment that you maybe did or did not see coming. And it's just like this constant roller coaster of emotions where you're never going to like have a moment where you can just be like, breathe, we're good now. Like, it just is a constant 2 hour, like, just onslaught of just aliens and everything.
Yeah, well, it even says it in the poster for the film. This time it's war, you know, and it does kind of have a war movie feel to it. Again, I'm not going to roast James Cameron for something he recognizes himself. But like the action scenes themselves, like they feel gritty. They feel like there's really guns going off. There's really stuff blowing up. And there's really people getting stabbed through the chest with this giant spiky tail thing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you guys know my love of practical effects, and I feel like this movie, if it's not the pinnacle, it's like one of the big pinnacles of traditional special effects, from, you know, just not just like the explosions and stuff, but animatronics and puppetry. It's just, you know, you look at all of the Alien Queen stuff, and I'm just like, I mean, that stuff is incredible how much it holds up. I mean, I think probably you can look at some of the rear projection shots and say that, you know, that kind of shows its age, but I honestly feel like all the Alien Queen stuff is brilliant and better than a lot of stuff I've seen nowadays that's computer generated.
I mean, I'm not going to disagree with you. It looked fantastic, even down to like the loading arms, the welding and probe arm that cut out the door and found Ripley at the very beginning. Like, they spent money on this film, and you can tell that they did.
Yeah. And that, as I'm mentioning the animatronics, I have to. Oh God, I just had his name in my Stan Winston. Major props to Stan Winston and his team. I mean, obviously, his name is pretty synonymous with James Cameron because he worked with him. Not just on this, but the Terminator films as well. And he, I think his team sort of belongs to that bygone era now of traditional special effects. And just if you watch the documentary for this film, just watching that team work to bring this to life, especially because half of what makes that stuff so great is the sound effects. And when you see them going through and making all the stuff work without the benefit that we have of hearing the finished product, it's amazing that they're able to do the stuff that they do and make it look so great.
And that was another thing that I really loved, was how James Cameron not only directed, but he was really just present in every moment of editing and filming. And he actually did spend like a legitimate 2 or 3 days just with the sound mixers, just working on what the pulse rifle would sound like, which, side note, like got James Horner pissed off, because then he came in to compose and James Cameron is just like working on pulse rifle noises. But it was just really, I think, cool to see how involved he was from start to finish with just everything. I mean, as a director should, but not just directing, casting, producing, just being, diving right into the whole movie.
Yeah, this was another film just like on Alien, where you had strife between the composer, the director, and the editors. Because actually the music, as James Horner wrote it, is all over the place in this film too. There's a lot that's not where it's supposed to be. And it's funny, there's even a bit in the documentary where Galen Hurd, the producer for the film, who obviously was working with James Cameron a lot back then. They in fact, they were married. There's this bit where there's this sort of back and forth between her and James Horner, and he's trying to say that he doesn't have enough time to write some of the final cues for the film, and because they keep changing the edit and he can't hit certain points, and she's like, and even after all that complaining, you can see the final cue works brilliantly, and it's one of the best cues he wrote, and it's been used in all kinds of trailers. It's a classic. But in actuality, the cue for that moment that she's talking about is taken from an earlier part of the movie when Bishop comes to rescue Ripley and Newt, in place of the cue that's actually supposed to be there for the final showdown between Ripley and the Queen. So the cue she's talking about is not even actually the right one. So that kind of shows how they were speaking a different language on the film. It works out. The music sounds great in the film, but it just shows that battle between composer and producer.
Okay. So whoever had over 3 minutes, John talks about the music, you guys win. I'm not sure what the over-under was on 3 minutes, but there you go. I'm actually, I would have taken the over on that.
I'm surprised he didn't bring it up from the moment we started talking. But
I was in control of this conversation at that point. He's very respectful when I do the intro.
Mm-hmm.
I had to squeeze in my music talk for the Alien stream into a very short amount of time. So you guys are gonna get a lot of it.
Hey man, here's the thing. Like, I know a soundtrack is very effective if I don't really notice it. And in this film, I really only noticed it when it wasn't there. I did notice the silence a lot, but that's an artistic choice, and I think it worked really well for this film.
Yeah, this is probably one of the scores that goes against my usual love of film music, where normally I'm very much a fan of heavily thematic scores, and this is very much a big action score where there's some motifs throughout the film, but it's mostly sort of wall to wall action music and keeping your adrenaline going, and I love it. So it's, just goes to show a good soundtrack is a good soundtrack.
I agree. Good soundtrack, good sound mixing too. Like, there's always the drip of water going on, which is something I noticed, and I guess just over time it kind of blends into the background, but it heightens that feeling of tension.
Yeah.
And I think the use of color really helped with that too. Like, I know it was very just bluish and blackish and dark, and that was another point of contention too, because I know the original people that they had on crew for lighting wanted to make the nest egg lighter. They wanted to make the alien queen lighter, and James Cameron and even Gail and Herb were very insistent on, no, this just needs to be dark and dismal and depressing and gooey and leaky. And one of the people actually ended up getting fired for that. And then they had to replace their lighting people. But I just think the lighting was really well done too, and something that you don't notice when you're watching, but if you're cognizant of it, it just really got this like creepy, like I'm not in a nice place vibe to the film as well.
Yeah, and that's the thing. James Cameron, they talk a lot about this in the documentary. He's not someone who's playing nice with people who aren't adhering to his vision for what the film should be.
Yeah, he is an auteur.
Yeah. As and there's probably some other words that some people would have for that.
I chose one that was mostly politically correct.
Yeah. But you know what? When the finished product is as good as Aliens is, who's going to argue? I do think in the case of the cinematographer, who they talk about it, where the cinematographer was very much like, no, I'm going to light it how I think it should be lit because I'm the cinematographer. But, the director is the one whose name is on the project, and it's his vision. So I do think Cameron was right about that. If you're working to contribute to somebody's vision, you better give them what they're asking for. Yeah,
I'm with you. Like, and Carol's not giving any love to James Cameron, and I always go back to my favorite director is Kubrick. But like, if I was in Hollywood, I would never want to work with Kubrick. I mean, I recognize the quality of what he produces, but geez, I don't want to work for that man. Oof. And maybe James Cameron is the same way. I don't know. I haven't done a whole lot of like snooping on James Cameron.
Yeah, I like to watch his movies. I don't think I'd like to work for him.
Right. I grabbed a bag of his trash earlier, but I didn't have time to go through it before the stream, so I'll go through it after, and I will post updates on Twitter. Yeah, so that wasn't creepy at all, right?
No.
Good.
Anyhow, I want to switch gears for a second and talk about the acting in this film, specifically the Marines, who I thought were excellent supporting cast members. A lot of them ended up winning Saturn Awards, Hugo Awards for their own acting in this film. And as much as, it's Sigourney Weaver's, character, and it's her film essentially, I think the Marines really stood out to me as just excellent comedic relief. Bill Paxton gave a hilarious performance as Hudson, Jeanette Goldstein as Vasquez. And I'm really glad that they were in the film, that the writing was as good as it was, and that they ended up getting the appreciation for their characters as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, that's one of the things about this movie. I've seen both of these films so many times that I don't get quite as scared as I did Once Upon a Time, and because I know what's coming at every moment, but I still laugh my ass off at Hudson every time. Just his, you know, what the hell are we supposed to do now? Game over, man. Game over.
Outfit.
Yeah, that game over, man, game over, that's just like part of the lexicon now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
People use it without knowing where it came from. So, yeah.
I mean, he has so many great lines that you can just quote, like 7 days, we're not going to even last like 17 hours, man. You know, like I just love too how he was so like half, like the glass is half full the whole time, like we're all gonna die, and everyone else is constantly having to be like, can you just shut up?
Yeah, I can't decide who my favorite is, but it's probably Hudson. Vasquez is awesome, but Hudson's just so funny. And like, is this the first film Bill Paxton ever did?
No, I know that he had a bit part in the Terminator before this.
Okay,
in the opening of the film. I'm not aware of his work prior to these films.
I'm going to check right now.
I think I can't think of anything else besides Terminator, but I'm glad he was in Terminator because it was his work on that got him this role as Hudson in Aliens. And several of the Marines were in Terminator as well, and were just brought on.
No, he'd done quite a few things. He was in Stripes. I remember him from Stripes. I remember him from Weird Science. Yep, he was Chet, the older brother. So far from his first film, actually.
Yeah, but I mean, and it was definitely the fact that he had that part in Terminator, and so he had his in with Cameron that ended up getting him this, and I'm really happy because he's just endlessly enjoyable to watch in this role.
And the great thing too, his spoiler alert death scene, but not really a spoiler because as we've said, everyone basically dies in this movie, was completely improv by him. Like he just ad-libbed his final going out lines, like, take this, you bastards, like, do you want some of this? And just went out in a blaze of glory, but it was his own doing that wasn't even in the script. And I just thought, what a great performance.
Yeah, I've heard that he improvised the game over, man, game over line as well. So like that, which tells you why he was a working actor, why he was able to go on and do so much after this film too.
Yeah, obviously, and he passed away a couple years ago, and and that was just gut-wrenching because he was pretty much a staple of my sort of movie-going experience growing up, and obviously he went on to also be in Titanic, another James Cameron film, and a lot of other movies, and recently was I think one of his last things that he did was he was on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the TV show, in a recurring role, and I really enjoyed him in that. So yeah, he's missed. He's a great actor.
Yeah, I really enjoyed a lot of stuff he did as well. He's always going to be Wyatt Earp's little brother to me, though, because I love that movie. Love that movie.
But yeah, I think, if we're just talking about the Marines, he definitely stands out. But as far as the supporting players, I am a huge fan of Lance Hendrickson's work as Bishop.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just fantastic. Because coming off of Ash in the first film, where you're expecting now the android to inevitably, turn out to be a villain, it's really nice to see that that he's it's not even, he's programmed that way, but it's just nice to see that he's a dependable, the person that he does come to save the day. I really enjoyed him in this, and really that whole sort of group that forms by the end of the film, where you have Hicks as well, and so it's Ripley, Newt, Hicks and Bishop that almost form this kind of family unit by the end of the film, especially in the special edition, is you've got little bits of added characterization, and so I really like that sort of unit that they form, and they all get out in the end. Spoiler alert.
Right.
I thought that was another really cool commentary that I think James Cameron did. At least that's how it always felt to me. With when Ripley first meets Bishop, she's instantly just like, why didn't anybody tell me there was an android on board? Keep this person away from me. And she's so instantly distrusting and judgmental. And I think we can all agree that's pretty relevant in 2020, that we can be that way with certain types of people. But it's a really cool progression to see that slowly over time, Ripley starts to trust Bishop more and more. And then by the end of the movie, she's actually saying, like, you know what, you did really well. Like, you know, and that was just such a nice change to see from the original reaction that she had to him.
Yeah.
Thank you for pointing that out, Jess. Really appreciate you coming through with that little factoid there.
Carol, I don't know what you're alluding to. David Fincher, what?
Hush.
Are you referencing something that didn't happen? I'm not familiar.
This is why John loves all movies, because he only chooses to acknowledge the existence of movies that he loves.
Yeah.
That's why you never hear him say anything bad about a film. It's either good or it doesn't exist. I know who you are. So I don't want to quite move off of the Marines just yet, because there's actually a whole lot of them that don't, that once people start dropping, a lot of them go pretty darn quick. But you've got Vasquez's counterpart, the big white guy with the same type of heavy pulse. I don't know. Heavy pulse gun? Is that what it's called? I don't even know. But
yeah, he's been in a number of things as well. He was in Shawshank Redemption, and also this is out of the blue, but Rush Hour. He played one of the FBI agents.
Okay.
But yeah, he's and normally he plays a jerk, and he's not a nice guy in this either, but I didn't necessarily want to see him die.
Yeah. And I don't know if you ever actually fully see it, but he and Vasquez both have something written on their guns. It says adios on hers, and I'm convinced his says bitch on it. It might say witch, but you can't ever quite see all of it. But I just think it's good. It's fun that the two heavy weapons have adios bitch on their weapons. I also like the touch that they were writing stuff on the back of their uniforms or their armor, and that feels organic as someone who was in the military. I mean, there's very much this idea of like, when you're stateside, everything's clean and neat and orderly, but when we're out there, it's like the rules on that type of stuff relax, and people do write stuff on their hats or their helmet liners or whatever. So I like that touch. That it's a very almost Vietnam War type of a thing. Really,
well, his inspiration was drawn from a lot of Viet War combat, and even the use of those things. And then when you see Pharaoh driving the ship, and it says Bug Stomper on the side of it, and you just get small little like nuances like that are really just, I know you had your problems with military things and how some of that went down, but some of that stuff was just like that feels real, and that's just a nice touch to see.
Yeah, this movie, there's a lot of layers even to the like more secondary characters.
Mm-hmm.
And Carol mentioned, I love him.
Yeah, just I love that they open from the first time we see him. opens from cryo sleep, and the first thing is that cigar goes straight into his mouth, and he is never without it throughout the whole film.
He talks with it, and he's practically eating the thing.
Mm-hmm.
I just love it.
He is, because when Ripley comes up and says, like, oh, is there anything I could do to help? He's just chewing on it, and it's not even lit. And I was just like, that's kind of disgusting, but okay.
Yeah. Did you ever was it lit?
I don't think I ever saw it lit.
I don't think so. Like, he's just chewing on it. Like, instead of chewing tobacco, he just chews a cigar. I mean, hey, do you, boo? I'm not here to judge, but the cigar chomping sergeant is like another archetype. Just like everybody's just been fulfilling one of these archetypes throughout the film. And
it's like, again, part of the reason why I love Alien so much is sort of how much of it feels real, and and the characters feel like they're real people. But you know what? Sometimes I just love a good archetype, and sometimes cliches are cliches for a reason, and they're just fun to watch. And so the cigar chewing, the sergeant is part of that. I just love the minute they all wake up and he's walking along and he's like, another glorious day in the Corps. It's just great. It's a lot of fun.
I also like how they kind of had specialist roles for each of them too. Like, Hudson was clearly the tech guy, and I can't remember her name, but there was a medic who died really early on.
Dietrich?
It's been so long since I've seen the movie, and I watched it once today. So, like, if somebody,
a lot of the Marines just were there, but then they just died pretty instantly, like that first major fight scene, and that was disappointing because I would have liked to have explored them a little bit more. But
yeah. There's a 4-hour version of this movie that I would watch for sure. If it included a lot more of the Marines and like maybe some updated action sequences.
Mm-hmm. And then you have Gorman, who is just, head honcho leading everybody into what is coming death. And he seems to be the most like, let's try and take this seriously about it. And the rest of the Marines are just like, when Hudson's like, is this just going to be like another bug hunt? And he's just like, just Ripley, watch Ripley's stuff on tape. Like, just please, let's just try and take this seriously. And his character was also very just interesting to see the decisions he made in terms of how he eventually got most of them killed just from poor management.
Yeah. Again, that's and Carol is saying the same thing. The lieutenant was such a tool until the end. I was in the Army. I've had good lieutenants and I've had bad lieutenants, but I've never had one that bad. Holy crap! What was he doing out there? Like,
yeah.
So like, this is just again, not to crap on it, but like, you send like 12 Marines to a place that might be overrun. Like you. That's not even a platoon.
I mean, to be fair, like Ripley had tried to warn them, and everybody in that like Weyland-Yutani corporate business meeting was just like, you've been gone for 57 years. We have no proof that you actually saw what you saw. Like, some of it seems like it's true, but like what you're saying about how bad this can actually be can't be real. And then you have Burke there that's just like, yeah, it's probably not that bad, knowing that he's already sent the colonists to go investigate, and he probably knows exactly what's going on. So, I mean, I can see how you're sending 12 of them and you think like, yeah, that'll do the job, because no one really knew or just believed what they were walking into.
Right. I think Dan is summing up your point very, very nicely here. You're pretty right there, Voice of Geekdom. There was a lot of incompetency on display here. It just felt botched the whole way. But to me, one of the weirdest parts was when the alien actually popped out of that one guy and put on the hat and had the cane and did the little kick dance across the. Oh, wait a minute. Wrong movie. Wrong movie. I'm sorry. Pedar, how dare you lead me astray? How dare you, sir?
I just want to point out Carol's comment too, that she just said, which is exactly, I think, the point that I was trying to sum up. Like, Burke knew what was happening and he sent them out there. And it was just, there was no way that anybody could have really known. And it was detrimental that Ripley was gone for 57 years.
Okay, so like, that's a solid point. I didn't make that connection necessarily. There are not very many Marines by design, by Burke's design. There are not very many.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of questions in the background of this film about exactly, is the company as in the dark as they claim to be, because let's not forget that it's been 57 years, but somebody at the company decided to have the Nostromo go out and try and find this alien life form, to start off. So there's a lot that's not being told here, and if I'm not mistaken, that's delved into, I think, a little bit in the imaginary third film, but I wouldn't know because.
Hey, I thought that film was all right. I thought number 3 was all right. It's got Tywin Lannister in it.
It wasn't bad, but I can't say that I loved it. I'm leaning more towards John on this one, where I thought like the third was kind of a misstep.
It's got Tywin Lannister in it.
Yeah, that's one of the only nice things I can say about it. And actually, I have a graphic novel collection of basically comics that were written after Aliens came out, but before the third movie, in which it shows Newton Hicks having survived. So that's my version of the story, and I'm sticking with it. But yeah, and okay, I won't turn this into a whole crap on Alien 3 Parade, but again, a large part of why I love this film is sort of the sense of found family over the course of the film, and that's how it ends. And especially, in the special edition, you have it revealed that Ripley actually had a daughter who has since died while she was asleep. And so and Newt has lost her family. So there's the sense of, of people finding, each other and being able to find comfort in their shared loss and become some sort of a family on their own. And that's just kind of crapped on in Alien 3. So that's part of the reason why I don't really acknowledge it.
Yeah, it's not the one you wanted, but it's the one you got, unfortunately. Like, I don't love that film either, but like, I'm also not as big a fan of this franchise in general, so it doesn't hurt me as bad that it didn't live up to my expectations. You know what I mean?
Well,
the way certain franchises may have done. I'm not naming any names, but certain franchises may have had that type of, I may have had that type of interaction with some of my favorite storytelling from my childhood. Anyway, I digress. What are we talking about?
Speaking of relationships, we need to talk about the Ripley-Newt relationship. And Carrie Henn, I have to give so much love to. Just to step into this role as someone who had never acted before, was not pursuing an acting career, and was just so randomly and miraculously found and cast. And I thought she just nailed the role and just did so perfect. And the chemistry between her and Sigourney Weaver just made this entire relationship that you saw develop. And and it ends with, them almost, recognizing each other as like mother and daughter by the end, which is sweet and heartbreaking at the same time. But wow, did Carrie Henn just blow me away in this?
Yeah, and Laura, you and I talked briefly before the stream, and we discussed that this is her only film credit. This is the only film she's ever done. Quite happily, too, from what I understand. Didn't want to be an actor, but I agree, she's fantastic in this.
What a role! If you're just going to do one.
Mm-hmm.
It's one heck of a performance, and she's just incredible. She has so many great moments from, they mostly come out at night, mostly. Mm-hmm. And then
that's Ripley, creepy AF, yo. That is so creepy, though.
Yeah, and Ripley, she doesn't have nightmares because she's just a piece of plastic.
Yeah, brought her own level of like comedic relief to it as well, and that was just really nice to see. And just even in her interactions with Hudson, just her copying his like affirmative and then just kind of like making that her own, and just how she got along so well with all of them. I can only speak volumes about how much I loved her performance in this. And yeah, to Carol's point too, I love how Newt was just constantly, I guess, not ignorant to the fact that they were probably all going to die. And even when all of the adults in this film have a shred of hope, she has that one line after their ship crashes where she's like, it's not even going to make a difference anymore, you guys.
Yeah. I agree. Like, she is a very unique character. Also, you don't get a character that is a young child who's not like, because she hasn't gone savage or wasn't raised by wolves or anything, that gives her the edge. No, she's just a kid who's small enough to fit into places that the big aliens can't. So she's been able to avoid getting captured that way. But like, she actually has some real value to them because she knows her way through the various crawl spaces, helps them, everybody dies without Newt there.
I do want to address Patter's question about psychological scars. Actually, in the case of her, if you watch the documentary, she was perfectly fine because she didn't seem fazed by anything because she could see how everything was being done. As a matter of fact, she has a point where she says they wanted her to be able to watch the original film and see how she handled that. And she said, and I just can't wrap my head around this. She says, being that I was only 8 years old, I actually found the whole movie hilarious instead of scary. And I'm like, when I was little and I caught a glimpse of that movie, I had my head under the covers. I was terrified. So she was definitely quite a different young kid than me. But apparently the first time she got scared was when they were at the premiere, and it was a part that she hadn't been around for filming. It's when the face hugger, moves real fast against the glass, and she jumped at that, and then James Cameron tapped her on the shoulder from behind and she jumped again, and he's like, we finally scared you.
Oh, people are comparing Newt to Star-Lord now. You guys go right ahead over there in the chat. Do you? Yeah. So is she British then? Because she's got kind of a British accent.
Yeah, because they were having to try and hire a lot of people who were already over in England before they were allowed to start to start auditioning American actors, because that was, I guess, part of the rules set up since it was
makes sense
shot over there.
I mean, they did audition 500 British actors, and just not a one of them was cast. And then, yeah, that's when they finally just started getting, especially with the Marines on board, casting all of those actors that had previously been in Terminator, doing all things like that. You know, Michael Biehn was cast like a week before he actually started filming. You know, Galen Hurd called him super last minute and was just like, "Can you fly over to England next week and start shooting?" And I'm glad he did, because his role as well, I just thought was so perfect. And I loved his character's interaction with Ripley, just in terms of him recognizing her as like a really like strong, can take care of myself kind of woman. I love how that was really well written into the script too.
Yeah, and I like that, you know, he's very much, you know, starts off, he's, you know, as Burke describes him, a grunt. But the first sort of stepping up he does is basically just adhering to what Ripley has suggested. So his big stepping up moment, it's not even a manly, like, I'm going to take charge now. It's him saying, yeah, we should do what she says. And I love that.
Yeah, down with the patriarchy.
Yeah.
Drink.
And I love too when they have that one moment where he's showing her how to use the pulse rifle and the flamethrower and the grenade launcher and all parts of that. And he's like, "Oh, well, maybe you shouldn't mess with all of the parts of the gun." And she's like, "No, like, show me everything. You started this." And then he's like, "Okay." And, you know, they're just having that like fun, just interaction, learning how to use the gun. And she's like, "I can take care of myself." And he's like, yep, I can see that you can.
Yeah. I love their dynamic, and there's there's a really great moment in the special edition where it's as she's about to take off after Newt, you know, before the big climax of the film, and it's just like a quick moment of she realizes that there's a good chance she's actually not coming back, and so she just turns around and they basically just tell each other their first names, and he's like, "Her, you know, don't take too long," and it's a nice human moment of them sort of recognizing that they bonded over this short time, and I like that because it's sort of bringing it back down to a human level of these are real people, and again, it just adds to that sort of family unit dynamic that I was talking about earlier.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, I want to talk about Michael Biehn for a minute, but we're about an hour in, so what do you say we just do the mid-roll real quick, and then I'll jump back in and talk about Mr. Biehn. Right. Not that Mr. Biehn. Anyway. So, hey, everybody who's here, thanks for showing up. We appreciate having you here. If you are not subscribed and you haven't hit the like button, we would really appreciate it if you'd do that right now. And I will say thank you ahead of time. Got to shout out the patrons. We've got John Bronsteen, a.k.a. Bronsteris the Wise. We've got Lady Maura Lee Sir Maura Lee of Starfall. Sixto Sounds, a.k.a. JP the Axe Shredder. And, of course, Ridiculous Ed Tollett. Sean, number one patron in the house. We love you, man. John, what do you got coming up on your channel?
So actually, I don't have the next thing lined up yet. I'm working on it. So yeah, stay tuned for that announcement. I've got it narrowed down to 2 films, but I'll let you guys know soon. Do want a reminder to everybody that I actually did discuss the first film in the series, Alien, this past Thursday. So if you want to see that discussion that I did with the lovely Carol Brown, please go ahead and check that out. We had a great time. And yeah, otherwise just stay tuned. I'll let you guys know what's coming up.
Right on, right on. And coming up next week on Here Be Dragons, we're going to do season 1 of The Umbrella Academy. John, you've still got a whole season of that to binge, don't you?
Yep, I do.
Yep. Good luck with that. I really liked it. I only watched the whole thing recently. So we're gonna do season 1 next Sunday. We're gonna do season 2 2 weeks after that. And in the middle there, I think I'm gonna squeeze in, and I know that nerd with a very, very special guest. Mum's the word on that for now. We'll let you know next week. But come back next week for some Umbrella Academy, specifically season 1. Yeah. Laura, what's coming up on your channel? Oh, wait.
Wait, don't have one.
But you got anything coming up? Anything you want to talk about? We got D&D Wednesday afternoon.
No, I just living my best
Living your best life.
life.
Right on, right on. Oh yeah. Links for my Twitter, John's Twitter, Nessie's Twitter. That's all down in the description. Links to the Patreon down in the description. I can't think of anything else. I will say this. If anybody out there listening has something you would like us to talk about, please don't hesitate to bring it up. Be that a show you might want us to cover. I'm not promising we will, but I'm promising I'll at least consider. We'll consider. But it could be something more cerebral. We did Hero Trope Talk last week. That was a very sort of like interesting topic I really enjoyed. So yeah, just let us know. You know where to reach us. For those in our Slack group, I think we're going to do a Zoom call after this. And if you want to join our Slack group, send us a shout out. We are welcoming of almost everybody. I say almost because no assholes allowed. Okay? Great.
Wait,
Kelly,
that confuses me then.
Yeah, I know. You're a co-host, so you're exempt.
Okay. All right.
Kelly, we're not going to cover Tombstone. Sorry. Maybe John will, though. That's a good movie.
Yeah, but not my preferred of the Wyatt Earp films. So.
Oh, dang. All right. So I guess I'll turn it back to the movie now. Michael Biehn, Ellen Ripley, and Sarah Connor. Can I just say, like, the dude he is a legend in science fiction movies for that reason and that reason alone. Like, he is, not that he got with them, but like he was instrumental in them actualizing. You know what I mean? And because both of those they are women characters that start as more traditional women characters, and they evolve into action heroes. And I don't want to say like, oh, thank God a man was here to teach you, but like, if you've never been taught, there's no shame in not knowing something, and somebody does need to show up to teach you.
See, I actually feel the reverse in this movie, where actually I think that Ripley is actually responsible for him self-actualizing.
Well, they can go both ways. Both things can be true.
Yeah, let's both us, the men, talk about this.
Yeah.
Laura, what do you think?
Hold on, Laura. The men are talking.
Yeah, no, I'll be quiet. You guys let me know when I can jump in.
No,
you know what? I kind of have to say that I think that it was Ripley who brings out more of Michael Biehn's character to himself. I think that he was very by the books and just a grunt and just I'm gonna follow the code of ethics that Marines have. And I think along the way Ripley taught him, like, just throw out the rule book sometimes. Sometimes it's not always about what's ethical. It's just about what is best for survival. And I think he was able to self-actualize better because she was around. So I'd have to give more credit to her in that relationship. And I think he just responded in a positive way, as opposed to it being like, what is this woman trying to do to me? he just recognized her strength and that she was able to protect herself, take care of herself, and that she could just be a leader, and he was willing to follow her and stand behind her. And James Cameron has said that he wrote the character purposefully to be that way, and that's one thumbs up that I'll give James Cameron credit to for in terms of how he wrote him.
Right on. Clearly you know more about the behind the scenes stuff than I do. I just noticed, I guess I just like Michael Biehn. And yes, people are talking about Tombstone because he's in that movie as well. And I love his character in that movie. One of the best lines I've ever heard delivered in a film. And they're talking about, what would you do if you sold your soul to the devil? I already did. Guy, so great.
Yeah, sort of Hicks is sort of the polar opposite of Michael Bihn's character in The Abyss, who was just terrible. But yeah, I really do like him in this film because he's not the traditional male hero, and I like that. And Carol mentions Vasquez because we haven't really talked much about her yet.
Did Vasquez just show up at your house, Carol? Hello, Vasquez. Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about her, but she's definitely a character that could be mentioned again. It wouldn't hurt my feelings. I think she's fantastic. Somebody said the other day that Vasquez was their Patronus. I can't remember who said that, but I'm like, that's fantastic. That's really, really funny.
Yeah, the only small issue that I have with Vasquez is that they didn't actually hire someone of the character's nationality to play her. But, it's the 80s. What are you going to do? That wouldn't happen in, we hope it wouldn't happen in an Aliens that was filmed nowadays.
I realized that at first that she wasn't that nationality. Like the first time I saw it when I was very young, I didn't realize that she wasn't that character's nationality. And I remember the way that I found out is because she was in Titanic playing the Irish mother of the two small children in third class. And I remember thinking, wait, that's the same person? That's Jeanette Goldstein. And I was like, wow, okay. So that was how I came to realize that. But yeah, I think it would have, I do support the idea of casting actors in roles that fit whatever nationality they're supposed to be. I just think it makes for a stronger performance because it's more relatable right off the bat.
Yeah, I think Carol's right. It still happens. It just happens less than it used to. But yeah, I don't think we're like there yet.
Which is why I amended it to I hope.
Right. I will say though, like, the movie is what it is. The performance is what it is. I have a really great appreciation for that character. Like, I wish my arms looked like Vasquez's arms. Are you kidding me? Like, that's goals right there.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. It's, you can't go back and change the past now.
Right. I'm not trying to like critique 1986 because like we'll be here all day.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would be nice if they had cast somebody who was, ethnically Latinx, but they didn't, and Jeanette Goldstein got a job and she did her best job. So like I'm not gonna complain about that either.
Yeah.
But yeah, but if you're confused, the action hero is still the white guy or the white lady. So we're clear. Like, don't want anybody to get confused. All right.
Yeah, we do have to say that, and I hate, I hate saying for the time because it's not an excuse, but the simple truth is that for the time, having a character like Ripley as the action hero of the film was pretty revolutionary.
Yeah, and thank God for it. She did a great job. Yeah, without her, Sarah Connor doesn't become what she is. Um, it proved that audiences would like it, would watch it, would pay to see it.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I can't really think of a female action hero from before Ripley. And feel free, anyone, to bring up one that was out there, but not that I know of. At least not one that was done seriously and given the sort of like depth of stuff to do that Sigourney Weaver was given, not only in the last film but this one as well.
Yeah, there may be, but I can't think.
Not off. No.
Yeah,
I can't think of one either. No, and there's been many after that.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you've got your Sarah Connors, you've got Rey from Star Wars.
Katniss from the Hunger Games.
A whole list of folks from the Marvel films. So yeah, she's a game changer for that. Oh man, my brain just locked up. I saw somebody mentioning Black Panther, and then it made me think about Chadwick Boseman. And all right, I'm just gonna reset the brain. What are we talking about? Aliens? But yes, I miss Chadwick Boseman. I really loved him. I'm not going to feel bad about taking a moment out of this stream to just say, you'll be missed, my man. I really enjoyed pretty much every film I ever saw him in.
Yeah, I know that we were just having a normal chat the other night in the Slack group, and then I saw a whole bunch of people, being really sad on Twitter, and tried to see what it was about, and then eventually I came to realize that's why, and it was kind of just absolute shock and disbelief.
Yeah,
because it just came out of nowhere. So
he kept it very private. He fought it with dignity. Continued to make films. I'm always going to remember him as Jackie Robinson and James Brown before he was T'Challa.
Yeah, I just keep thinking about, on one level, it's bad enough when just anybody, especially one still so young, passes, because it's the loss of a human life, which is tragic enough in itself. But you think of what he had come to stand for in the eyes of so many, and he was a hero to a lot of people. And I think that the shock of all that really hit me, and it's just one of those things where you sort of question, why did this have to happen?
I mean, it didn't have to. Yeah. So like, it didn't have to happen. So yeah, if you think, just go get tested, catch it early, and make your donations to cancer research. That's what I do.
Yeah.
Both of my parents are cancer survivors. My mom is bringing that up in the chat right now. So yeah. Anyway, I don't mean to bring it down, but this man is more than just an actor. He's more than just the King of Wakanda in some movie. He became iconic to an entire segment of our country, of our world. He represented a lot of hopefulness for the African American community, and his passing will be felt. And yeah. Anyway, rest in power, T'Challa, Wakanda forever. And all right, now let's get back to the movie. We talked about it. I can move past it.
Yeah, I did want to mention we were talking about obviously Sigourney Weaver's performance, and I can't do it without mentioning that she actually got an Academy Award nomination for this film, which was huge back then for, a sci-fi, fantasy horror film. I think she had obviously built up enough of a reputation that it really didn't matter what kind of movie she gave a great performance in. The Academy was more open to awarding it. And the film overall got 7 nominations, which was a pretty big deal. They weren't quite there with like Best Picture, Best Director nominations yet, but still, the fact that it got Best Actress was pretty huge. And
well, it's a sad thing. I mean, even to this day, there definitely is a slight bit of more love, I think, at the Academy Awards and at award shows in general for like science fiction and horror and things like that. Most recently, Arrival a couple years back got a Best Picture nom, which I was really happy to see in there. Thought that was a great movie, but it would be nice over time if just science fiction in general got more recognition at award shows, because it's not a genre for everybody, but I think it definitely is something that should be more well represented.
I think it is a genre for everybody. Honestly, I think science fiction tells stories that no other medium can, and they're important.
And really,
they show us science fiction always shows us one of two things: either the society we want to become or the society we fear will become. And I think both of those are important stories to tell. Just so we know, you have an idea of what you want to do, and also of like a good science fiction story can show you the pitfalls to avoid in order to achieve that.
Yeah, I would like to say also, if you look at the history of filmmaking, really, science fiction fantasy built the sort of film medium. If you look at really early, films, I mean, I think probably one of the best well-known, thanks to the movie Hugo and just sort of the fact that it's actually gotten some Blu-ray releases, is the George Méliès film A Trip to the Moon, with the giant moon face. And it's a short film that's, I mean, they were all short films back then, but it shows this group of scientists, astronauts, basically torpedoing themselves up to the moon, and that's sci-fi. It's and those are the kinds of things that's built up the medium. So now we have the Academy saying what's sort of proper filmmaking, and up until recently they pretty much always excluded science fiction. And it's just kind of weird. It's like, what built this whole business for you, and so they seem to forget.
Yeah, and anytime studios start having a harder time, if they can get back to good fantasy sci-fi storytelling, it saves them almost every time. Star Wars did it. Marvel movies helped with that, which is not your traditional sci-fi fantasy, but it is fantasy storytelling. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that type of escapism is we all crave that. And in this specific film, though, like, we see a future that we should be afraid of, where corporations are prioritizing profits over people.
We should be.
It's horrifying.
I'm sorry, we should be afraid of that happening?
Yeah, I'm just going to say, it's a horrifying alternate reality future. Oh my gosh, people are do Apollo 13, do Das Boot. Yes, that's next week. I'm bumping Umbrella Academy, we're going to do Das Boot, okay? 4.5 hours of claustrophobic filmmaking. We're talking about aliens, y'all.
With, one or two digressions.
Well, yeah, I mean...
Just a few.
You know how we do it around here.
Well, I had a question for John, if we can.
Yeah, go ahead.
The movie for a second. I know, Stephen, you said that your main grievance was how they handled like the military aspect of things and the Marines. I know I love this film. I know, John, you equally love it as well, but I was wondering if you had any moments or parts of it that just didn't strike a chord for you, or that you felt were just not as good as they could have been, if you have any dissensions.
Wow, asking me to be critical.
I know, like,
wow.
The whole time she's asking the question, I'm just like, no, I already know the answer to this.
It's weird because, as I said earlier, I've kind of had a journey with this film, so I can probably say that there has been stuff that I've been critical about. I think that I wasn't always really down with the broader characterizations for the characters, because coming off of Alien, which has a lot of subtlety to it, I think that I wasn't always as crazy about even Hudson, who's a very over the top character. I think I don't always prefer that, but it's just over time I've grown to like that aspect of this film and the ways that it's different. But as for anything right now that I'm not crazy about, I don't know. I don't know that there really is. I mean, maybe some logic stuff. I always have wondered how the Queen Alien fits up into the spaceship at the end of the film and tags along for the ride. But that's, I just give myself over to sort of the implausibility of movie making at that point.
Well, she was able to sneak aboard because they didn't properly defend their perimeter.
Yeah.
Well, all the options are gone, Stephen. Come on.
Actually, you want to know the one thing that actually bothered me the most, even more than just like Vasquez should never be on point. You don't put your heavy weapons up front. Sorry. But the thing that bothered me the most was their vehicle had like 3 inches of ground clearance. I'm like, one good sized rock and you're just boned. You just can't drive there. That is not a military vehicle. That is somebody's idea of what a cool, it looks cool, don't get me wrong. I really like the way the turret kind of like came down over the back for clearance and everything, but just like there is no way that can drive on anything other than a perfectly flat road. All right.
They were clearly on the whole time. It was
they were.
LB 426, very well paved.
Yeah, except for the giant jagged rocks all over the place. But none of those were on the road, thank God. All right. So John, if you cast Keira Knightley in this film, what part would she play? Would you prefer to see her as Ripley or Vasquez?
Well, Ripley, because it wouldn't be appropriate for her to play Vasquez.
Good answer.
Yeah. But no, but then you're replacing Sigourney Weaver, which is a big no-no. You never replace Sigourney Weaver. So I feel like you've laid a trap for me, Steve.
I have, in fact. And you've fallen right into it.
No, if I can backtrack for a second, I will say if there's something I can criticize for the film, aside from, I feel like I already did make a criticism, which was Vasquez's casting, even though great performance, but
right.
Still, it's great. But one other thing, which is really only a director's cut, issue I have, which I think most of the director's cut works brilliantly. I will say that one of the opening sequences where we actually get to see the compound before things go haywire, and where we actually see Newt's parents going out to investigate the derelict spaceship. I think it dispels some of the tension later in the film, where I think it's much stronger in the theatrical version when we get to the planet and we don't know what's happened. It's a complete mystery. So as we're discovering things, our mind is kind of racing with, how could the aliens have gotten loose? Did somebody go to the ship, or did something else happen? We just don't know. Oftentimes what you don't know is more frightening. And so I would say that that's sort of a criticism I have, but it's really only of the director's cut. But it's a shame because I actually love everything else in the director's cut. And it's not a bad sequence. I just think that it ruins a little bit of the tension of the film. Fair
enough. What about you, Laura? Is there anything you would criticize since you brought it up?
Not too many things, but one thing that I did note, I can suspend, the laws of science and physics and everything for the most part in movies like this. But what always got me and what really bothered me again during my rewatch was at the end of the film when the alien queen is on the ship and Ripley decides that she's going to jettison her out into deep space, and they open the airlock and everyone is still just breathing fine. No one, needs any sort of equipment or whatever. And I just thought, I don't think I can look past that too much.
I actually think that that's not that too far off. Decompression takes a long, long time. They appear to be in a large-ish enough space, like the landing bay. Like the air would be getting thin very quickly for sure, but like it would actually take several minutes for
because we can see the air.
Yeah, there's definitely
out, but there's still some in there. Yeah, I'm able to suspend my disbelief.
But I did not perform scientific analysis on the sort of like time and volume and relative pressures. So like maybe that's something I always wonder about, because like even in like The Expanse, I wonder, would they still have air for that long? I don't know. So I get what you're saying, Laura.
I'll put the Mythbusters on it.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's build a spaceship.
Carol, I love the director's cut. I didn't say that I didn't. I just have one, I think one part of it just, lessens some of the tension. But overall, I think it's fantastic. There's a reason why I watched that version today. So, yeah.
Hold on, I'm defending my honor. Aaron's got your back, apparently. Like, I'm.
Well, no harm, no foul. I'm good.
I hope I did not offend you. I just disagree.
No, not at all. Movies are meant to be critiqued and
sure.
Questions like this, and that's what makes conversations like this great and beautiful, is that we can't always find common ground, but that's what just keeps it lively and interesting. But thank you, Aaron. That was very kind, and I appreciate that.
And plus, also, it's really rare that Stephen and I agree on a point. So
it really is.
So really, this is a rarity.
High five.
Wait, which?
Okay, cool.
So yeah, it's not like that always happens. So
no, it does not. Like, we tend to agree in broad strokes, but when you get down to the nitty gritty, it's surprising how often we disagree.
Mm-hmm. But see, now Aaron's just going to use that as further ammunition.
Yep.
We had to agree on this particular instance. No. But I will say,
I do get your criticism though about the sort of Where's the air? Because the air would be getting a lot thinner very quickly, which would, yeah.
And actually, my small criticism of that moment wouldn't even be the air necessarily, but the fact that she's able to hold on without being sucked out into the vacuum of space. She's really strong.
Yeah, she's got her arm hooked through the thing. So that's why.
She also has the queen that has a hold of her leg that is pulling her down too. And I almost thought, I was like, is this woman's arm gonna rip off? Because that just
had the
pressure.
I literally had like the same kind of thought. Like, is her shoulder should dislocate or something.
But see, and that again is where, I mean, I've said this a couple times over the course of discussing both of these films, where Alien is very much science fiction horror, and Aliens is definitely like science fiction action adventure, and so that whole sort of, with action adventure films, you get that implausible in nature of some sequences, and
right.
So it's like, I mean, I think it goes without saying that I love the Lord of the Rings films unconditionally, but it's like you get to the end of Return of the King and Frodo and Sam should have been melted for their proximity to the lava. I'm okay with that. So sort of same principle here. You just let it go.
Right. Like, you know me. I'm going to be like, physics, no. But like, I also believe in the rule of cool, you know, when it comes to filmmaking. Like, it's a visual medium. Show me the cool looking thing. I'll forgive a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I think, speaking of the first film, Ridley Scott, actually one of the things that he often says is something to the effect of, may not be accurate, but, it looks effing cool. So I went with it. Which I think he especially said in the case of Gladiator, where there's a lot of stuff in the opening of that film that is not accurate to the time period.
Yes, we talked about that when we talked about Gladiator on your channel.
Yeah. But he thought it looked really cool, and it, worked visually. So, yeah. And yeah, Kelly will be going on and on about sailing when we...
I will say this.
When we eventually do our Master and Commander chat.
I will say this.
I want in on that, just saying. Sorry.
Did you say you want in on that?
Oh, yeah, I love that movie.
Okay, John, you've got volunteers lining up. I will say this, though.
Like a full panel for that one.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
I will be over there in the chat section. I do enjoy that movie, but again, it's not one of my like way up there ones. On the upside, though, Kelly, in this film, in Aliens, they like all the sailing scenes were flawless, perfect. It's exactly all the sailing scenes. Gosh, I don't know. I don't really have that much else to say, if I'm being honest with you.
Because I keep feeling like...
So you guys...
we keep getting, like, we keep talking about certain tangents, but I feel like there's loads of stuff that we haven't talked about. You just talked about sailing, and it reminded me to talk about, not actual sailing, but as far as the ships go, it's sort of a real testament to James Cameron's approach on this film, in contrast to Ridley Scott's, where the ship, the spaceship in this film literally looks like a giant gun.
Mm-hmm.
Versus in the prior film, which was an oil refinery, and it looked like such, and it just really goes to show the different approaches for each film. Yeah, and we can talk also about the alien design, because they changed it up quite a bit for this film. They're more reptilian looking, than I think in the original film.
Well, James Cameron did alter the design. I mean, you have nods to what you saw with the first Alien in the first film, but he changed, I think, like the conical sphere of like the alien's head, in terms of like more goo, just more scary looking. I feel like the aliens in this film were definitely drippier. But I just thought that it was definitely I liked the subtle change in like what you saw in terms of the alien structure, and I thought how they designed the queen alien was also just absolutely terrifying. And when you have the scene of her laying eggs, and then she just abandons that, and like that whole scene of her getting up and well, graphic, but like really is just well done in terms of effects.
Yeah, I mean, it's like on the other stream, I was singing the praises all day long of H.R. Dieter because he's, a disturbed genius. But what's really impressive about this film is that Cameron largely designed the Alien Queen himself, and obviously with the help of Stan Winston and his team. It's a brilliant design. It's just, I mean, I think the Alien Queen is, iconic on its own, even separate from the standard Alien. I remember when I was little, I didn't even, I wasn't a fan of these movies or anything, but I remember they even had, action figures. And, I remember specifically the Alien Queen and those teeth,
Mm-hmm.
and just that the way it opens up where, you pan over and you see that something is laying those eggs, and then you see the Alien Queen, but you're not really sure what it even is. And then as, the way its head is designed, where part of it comes out and then the teeth kind of lower down. It's just so creepy and it's great. I
also love the intelligence that they give the alien queen, and you really see that these are bugs, so to say, but there's like, thinking, and the lights are on because you have that moment where Ripley is ready to just completely torch all of her eggs. And you have the two aliens that are kind of flanking the queen, and you have that moment of like agreement between Ripley and the alien queen looking at each other, just saying like, you let me in, you go, and I'm not going to kill your babies. And there's that like moment of like, very brief, but like that moment of trust between them. And I love seeing that intelligence in the aliens come into play, because I think it's important to note that like, these aren't just killing machines, but there's like clockwork and thinking and processes going on too. And I just really loved that moment.
Yeah, but that moment where Ripley sees the different aliens starting to creep forward, and she's like, and then she just lets loose.
Well, she lets loose because one of the eggs opens up as if it's about to hatch, and she gives the queen that look as if to say like, that's not what we agreed on. No hatching. And then she just does everything. And just, again, like the queen just detaching was horrendous. And just, I don't know, maybe I'm like, from a female perspective, like that to me was just like, ouch, painful. Like, but I just, what a moment.
Yeah. Like I'm with you, John, when you see like the egg sack, and then it pans over, and then it pans over, and then it pans over, and then it pans over. You're like, geez, where? Oh, there she is. And terrifying sort of creature design, a great evolution from the sort of like base worker drone design. It's like a believable queen, which I really like, different enough to be visually distinct, but similar enough that you can tell that they're basically the same type of creature.
Yeah.
I really like that. Can I just say that if I had been in Ripley and or Hicks's shoes, Newt would have died. because there is no way I'm going back for her once I'm out of there. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, can I touch on that?
Please do.
That was one of the reasons why I thought it was always just really smart to bring a child into the mix of this plot. I think it gives the film like just a different level of humanity that just you didn't have in the first film because there were no kids. And even when there's only one child now, like I think just how you're responding as an audience member watching this film, like you can see the Marines die and you're just like, well, that sucks, but yeah. But I remember I've always had like this notion as I watch it, I'm just like, you better leave Newt alone. Don't touch that girl. You stay away from her. And Ripley obviously has that same sort of affection as if to say, like, you can like screw with everyone else here, but do not mess with this girl. And so I can see like, why, like, yeah, you go back for her because you have that sort of like level of affection. Would she have gone back for an adult? I don't think Ripley would have. I think most people probably would have abandoned it, but I think there's definitely a distinction between having a small child and how you react to like, do I just peace out and say like, sorry, Newt, or do I just go back and do it? And just, again, like having a child amongst this plot, I think just really added a lot to it. I would have gone back for her.
Yeah.
Okay. I wouldn't. I'm sorry. I would have gotten me and whoever else was with me to the ship. Bishop, we're out of here. Nuke it from orbit. Sorry. And which is why
there's
I
any
run a YouTube show. That's why Ellen Ripley is a freaking legend, and I am not.
If there's any of Steven's children watching this, take note.
No, Newt's not my child. Sorry.
Oh, okay. No, it's, I don't know, but that's sort of, I mean, in this situation, I have no idea how I would react. I mean, I don't think I would be a Ripley anyway.
Yeah, you're a Hudson. You'd be a Hudson.
I don't think I'm a Hudson, but I'm definitely not a Ripley.
Okay.
No, but I do love that sort of build up to the moment when she's resolving to go back and and she's pulling Hicks along, and she's like, Bishop, how much time? And he says, plenty of time, 24 minutes. And she's like, we're not leaving. And he's like, we're not. And just her resolve, and the fact that Hicks totally gets and is on board for that, and when she's like, don't let him leave, and he says, we're not going anywhere. And it's just
in that moment, sorry.
Yeah, and it's just her, and just everything, the way she marches down, goes down the elevator, and it all, the music all builds up at that point to that shot where where the lift opens up, and and she's holding the gun and stuff. Which, by the way, we have to say that Ripley really great with the guns. Sigourney Weaver, not a fan, so that made for tension on during the making of the film, but she certainly looks the part, and she's appropriately badass holding all that weaponry. And it's just right, it's like, don't mess with this woman at that point in the film, because she is just in full protective mode, going after this child, and it's just great. And you're completely on board with it as an audience member, because like you were saying, Laura, you feel very protective of this child.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course it culminates later once they're back aboard the ship and the alien queen is there, and it's a showdown between the two mothers.
Mm-hmm. Get away from her, you bitch. Again.
I wanted that one. I wanted to quote that. Oh well.
You can say it again, Stephen.
No, it's cool. I'm kidding. That's my favorite line in this whole movie, though.
Mm-hmm. You know what? It always reminds me of too. completely different, but like Molly Weasley when Ginny's at risk and she's like, not my daughter, you bitch. Like just a mother's instinct and protectiveness. Like I can totally see why she goes back for her.
Somebody made that comparison in the chat earlier about Molly Weasley stealing Ellen Ripley's line. I'm like, yeah, I hadn't noticed that, but like, that's my favorite line from the movie when she walks out in the power loader.
Yeah.
I know you haven't, John. Have you ever watched Community, Laura?
No, I haven't.
Okay, well, there's an Halloween episode where one of the characters basically uses cardboard boxes and spray paint and makes a power loader costume. It's pretty awesome. I love Community, and I love that they paid homage to Alien that way. He's even making the and his best friend is dressed up as a Xenomorph. Yeah, it's great. I love it.
Yeah, and of course I love that for the power loader they basically had some really strong guy like inside the thing actually moving it. Which, is such a sort of practical way of doing that. But then once you add in all the sound effects and everything with the movie, you'd never think that in a million years.
Right. I will say this too. Slight spoilers for Stranger Things. Is that going to bother anybody? You've seen Stranger Things, haven't you?
I haven't seen. No.
Okay. Well, you have, Laura?
Not the last season, but I did.
Okay. Well, we'll just say that Paul Reiser is in Stranger Things, and they lean on the fact that he is in Alien to play with your expectations about his character, because he plays a character who, at least on the surface, and I'm not going to tell you if he is or not, but like he looks and acts and appears similar to Burke in a lot of ways. And one of the things that Stranger Things does really well, I know this is another digression, is that it does pay homage to the movies that the creators love, which are 80s movies. I feel like season 2 pays a lot of homage to Aliens in particular, down to like taking the single bad guy from the first season and extrapolating it into multiple bad guys in the second season. And that's the one that Paul Reiser is in that season. So yeah, good stuff. But like, I really like the way they play with your expectations, because he was in this film and played a very specific kind of character in this film.
And I will say that though, as wonderful job as he does being, appropriately despicable, Paul Reiser is kind of the element of this film that for me gives away it being a total 80s film, because it's his hair and his suit that he's wearing when he comes in at the beginning. It's like, yeah, there's no way this wasn't from the 80s. Right.
Well, his hair and Ripley's hair too.
Yeah. But at a certain point that just adds to the charm.
Yep. I agree.
And Carol was asking if this was the last all practical effects and camera movie. It might have been. It was probably the last really big one.
Okay, so I got a question for you, and John, you've got a better eye for this, and it's very related to Carol's question. There was a shot near the end of the film where the dropship has just picked up Ripley and Hicks, and Bishop is flying them back towards the air purifier terraforming thing. Mm-hmm. You can see a distinct difference between the ship in the foreground and the structure in the background. Yeah. Is that an early CGI shot, or is that there's that layering of like a model shot? And
it's rear projection, where basically they do the effect and then they it's up on a giant screen and they film and the characters or another object in front of it. That's why there actually wasn't green screen used in the film. It was rear projection, which basically what's interesting is they're actually we're coming back around to a much more advanced version of that with what they're pioneering on The Mandalorian.
Right.
These big giant screens that kind of move as the characters move, and it's more like a dome. But essentially, it's that technology just evolved, and I find that really interesting that after kind of moving from rear projection onto green screen, now we're moving back to actually using screens so that the actors can actually see the background or the foreground that they're interacting with.
So that was, and I knew you'd know. I don't know the tech of that quite as well, but like that is probably the only shot in the whole thing that like kind of broke my immersion, But it's an establishing shot. It's not like a huge action set piece. It didn't, wasn't that bad. But I could, like your eye can tell the difference. It just can't. So I wanted to ask about that. Y'all, we got like 10 minutes left. We can go over a little bit if we need to. So make sure you get it in now, though. If you've got something we need to talk about, get it in now. And I just wanted to shout out everyone in the chat. If you've got a question or an observation or something we haven't talked about that we want to make sure we cover, go ahead and let us know. Laura, go ahead.
Okay. Another small grievance that I had, just in terms of how the story unfolded with this. After Newt gets taken by the alien and she is brought back for cocooning, it seems like a significant amount of time would have passed, just in the sense of by the time Ripley then gets to her, I would have expected her to have already been face-huggered, but she was just hanging out in the cocoon. Didn't really seem like anyone else was immediately in the area guarding her. And to me, that just always felt like, I don't know if you want to call it plot armor or just not really wanting to, I guess, address that. But to me, I just thought that was always like, I would have expected her to have been face-huggered. And that's another issue that now Ripley has to contend with, because she goes to get her and she's already in the process of being impregnated. And now what do you do? But it just always felt like a very easy out, where it's like, I just break down this little cocoon and we're good to go.
Yeah, I can see that. And I will just add to that, like, there were a few instances in this film where I was like, I don't know how much time has passed. Like, they don't really give you a good sense of the passage of time. But that's not really, I guess, the important part of what's going on as far as like the storytelling goes. But I think I'm absolutely with you. Like, she's gone, and then Ripley finds her minutes later, and she's half unconscious and covered in goo already.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was fine with it because that kind of, because they've been kind of doing this with the other colonists, so it's probably just sort of a standard. They, put someone they find, there, cocoon them up, and then plant an, egg in front of them and just let it do its thing. I don't know that they necessarily are counting on somebody coming back after her. I don't know. It's one of those things that when you're caught up in the adrenaline of the film, you're not really thinking about these things anyway. So, so it's never been something that I was bothered with. But it is a certain amount of plot armor, because it's, it's, you want the threat of danger against the child, but you don't want to place the child in so much danger that you're making the audience mad at you. So, and Carol, we did actually speak about Bishop earlier. he's fantastic. I mean, one of my favorite characters in the film, and and another reason why I hate to keep going back to the film that I say doesn't exist, but definitely sort of angered about how little of him is both in the film, and also how his, shall we say, his persona is used later on in that film. But in this film, I think he's great, and I like the setup of Ripley not trusting him, and then him showing that he's actually quite worthy of trust.
And the crazy thing is, like, the goriest scene in the whole film is Bishop getting ripped in half and milk spraying everywhere, and like,
and I love
that they got the most graphic with a robot, basically.
I really love that they held on to the android design of the first film, because by this point James Cameron had done Terminator, so it would have been easy enough for him to say, no, I like this version of Android, so we'll just say in the intervening years they changed them, and it suspiciously looks more like my Terminator designs, but I like the fact that they kept the whole milky kind of gross factor of the androids, and also that moment that you're talking about is kind of a couple shocks in one, because at first it looks like he might have had a face hugger, and and something, and one of the aliens is bursting out of his chest, but no, it's actually the tail, and then we get that great reveal. So it's just fantastic.
Serious upper arm strength, though, too. I mean, you just got spliced in half, and you're still hanging on to Newt so she doesn't get vacuum sucked out of the room.
Yeah. I mean, he's a robot. They probably are stronger than humans. So, like, I can buy him holding on way better than I can buy Ripley holding on, like you said earlier, especially with the Queen, like, hanging on to her ankle. But, she got some reps in, I guess. Been hitting the gym.
And actually, speaking of effects showing their age, what's interesting about that sequence is that in the original film, there was actually a really obvious effect of when, I think it's when Bishop catches Newt, and there's actually a shot where they actually had the actor, and his bottom half is like under the floor.
Underneath the floor, yeah.
Yeah, and they didn't, it wasn't, you could tell that that's what it was, but they actually went back and changed that when the Blu-ray release was done. And I'm not normally in favor of alterations and stuff like that, but since I wasn't super familiar with the film beforehand, yeah, exactly, Stephen. Since I wasn't super familiar with the film before the Blu-ray came out, I had seen it, probably one other time, but every time since then it's been the Blu-ray. So I'm okay with it, and and now it looks perfect, but yeah, it is funny how sometimes we're okay with alterations and sometimes we're not.
Hey, actually, there's a lot of alterations in Star Wars that make it better. Just there's some that make it worse.
Yeah.
Laura, do you have any other thoughts about Aliens?
Just want to know what your guys' thoughts were on how it ends. It's very similar to how the first one ends with, in the first one, Ripley is going back into hypersleep, and she's hoping that in 6 weeks she'll get picked up. And we find out at the beginning of Aliens it's actually been 57 years. And then this one ends in a very similar way, where the 4 survivors that we have left are going into hypersleep, planning on going back to Earth. But we have this movie end not knowing, do they get there? Do they not get there? And it seems like there was closure that was lacking in terms of what these characters' fates really end up being, because just because they're going to sleep and they're trying to go home doesn't mean they make it there. And I can understand why you end the film in that way. But I've never thought it was, I guess, the ending that I would have liked it to be, because it just leaves the fate so open-ended. You find out what happens, at Alien 3 in the beginning. They just so briefly touch on, like, yep, this happened.
Do we?
Yes, we do, John. It exists. I promise.
Yeah. I would like maybe just even like an ounce more of closure with the fate of our 4 survivors, instead of just hypersleep. And, that was a nice movie. Hope you guys enjoyed it.
First, I want to sidetrack for a moment and say, Patter, you're actually wrong. Han doesn't shoot first. He's the only one who shoots.
Right.
And
only.
Yeah. As far as the ending of the film, what really works for me is sort of the emotional resolution that you have these characters having sort of found each other and found some measure of peace. And so for me, that's what works. I don't really mind that it's open-ended, because it allows my imagination to kind of, think of, what might have been. I mean, for me, this is the end of the series. So yeah, I don't know, but I like the fact that it ends with both Newt and Ripley saying, maybe we can both sleep now. The end of the nightmares. I think it was never probably gonna not be open-ended, because they very much would have wanted to continue on the series, which they in fact did, if you ask certain people. So I think that's just the way it was gonna be. But yeah, I don't know. It works for me. I wouldn't have minded maybe some more resolution, but it works. It works.
Yeah, I think I agree with Laura on this one. I think I would have. Well, I maybe I don't agree with Laura. I don't know that you've actually said what you think, but I think I would have liked, personally, a little more of a bow on the end. Now, it's very clear that it's set up for the story to continue. They're in hypersleep, and we've got our small family of heroes out among space, and you could have made a million different stories. They made the one they did, that is Alien 3, which I have seen, and Charles Dance is in it, and I like that, and Sigourney Weaver's in it too. I like that.
How did you crack alternate universe traveling, Stephen?
Yeah. I will send you my diagrams via email for my interdimensional. It's called it's time and relative dimensions in space. There's an acronym that I can't remember for that, but I'll just spell it out for you. There you go. Oh, Carol, you threw off my timing. That's how I do it with my TARDIS. So, like, what did I think of the ending? I would have liked something that was a little bit clearer, that gave us an actual happy ending for these people. Because it is like, knowing Alien 3 and what happens, it hurts my heart that they go through all of this stuff and it's kind of for nothing in the end.
No, it's not for nothing, Stephen, because they're perfectly fine after this film. I don't know what you're talking about. Okay?
Again, I'm talking about stuff from a parallel universe, John. Fine. Ignore it if you want.
Well, okay. Yeah, let's talk. I'll talk seriously for a second. Alien 3 ruins the ending of this film, which is why I don't acknowledge it. I understand what Fincher was going for, wanting to, shock and surprise people, but But as we've seen in other things, shock and surprise does not always make people happy.
No, it doesn't.
And so it really does just crap all over this film. And it's, I don't know. I know some people have positive things to say about Alien 3. I'm not one of them.
Fair enough.
I think that it's an average movie taken on its own.
But as part of the franchise, it makes it much worse.
After the first two films, it's shameful is the word I would use.
Shameful. All right. David Fincher, you're called out.
That's it. I'm a fan of a number of his films. So, but
Yeah,
Alien 3 isn't one of them.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And I don't think he's a fan of it either. So I don't think I'm breaking his heart.
Right.
Do you feel the same about Alien Resurrection?
Yeah.
Okay, but Alien versus Predator, that movie was fun.
Alien Resurrection is just like, it doesn't even realize what franchise it's a part of. It's just a weird movie.
Yeah, there's like, it's got a very convoluted. I will say this. Like, I always have this question about where do the xenomorphs come from? What is their origin? And they have the sort of like the idea of the xenomorph has infiltrated pop culture enough that occasionally you get imitators, you know? I'm sure, well, I'm not sure, but I assume neither one of you is familiar with Warhammer 40,000. It's a game universe. It's a setting across the galaxy, and I'll spare you a lot of the details, but suffice to say that there is an alien empire called the Tyranids, and there is a lot of inspiration drawn from xenomorphs in the sort of aesthetic and like the way they're represented in the stories of that game world. It's definitely had its effect on other pop culture as well.
I do want to pop this up. Yeah, Alien Resurrection was written by Joss Whedon, and you all know I love Joss Whedon, but two things. One, the director clearly didn't understand Joss Whedon's writing because of the way he directed the actors to actually perform those lines. Second, why would you hire Joss Whedon for an Alien film? Because as much as I love him and I love his stuff, it's like if you're trying, you have to be wanting to go in a wildly different direction with the Alien franchise to hire Joss Whedon. Because he's going to bring a certain kind of sense of humor and irreverence to it that isn't really in keeping with what was established. So, yeah, I think that's just another misfire, but for different reasons. It's like, I feel like Alien 3 was just sort of, they had lofty ambitions, but it turned out to be a disaster. Alien Resurrection feels like they weren't even trying. So,
but Alien versus Predator, that was fun.
Well, I've never seen it, so I can't comment.
I mean, it's ridiculous, but it was fun. Have you seen Alien versus Predator, Laura?
I have, and I did very much enjoy it.
Yeah. I mean, not to be taken seriously, but as a popcorn action aliens movie,
But see, that's the very problem, isn't it? It had gotten to a point where you can't take it seriously anymore because it's made such a joke, and that's why I, even with Ridley Scott's new, you know,
Prometheus and all that.
It's like, well, Prometheus had problems of the script where a lot of characters acted needlessly stupid. The problems with Alien Covenant were different because he tried to go back into the Xenomorph territory, but by his own admission, the Xenomorph isn't scary anymore because of what's been done with it in the subsequent films. So I think if he wants to continue to dabble in the universe, he's got to go a different route. I think the most interesting things that he's done in the new films have been related to Michael Fassbender's David character. So I think he should probably pursue that. For better or for worse, the Xenomorph has kind of been ruined because
Did this movie ruin the Xenomorph?
Aliens?
Yeah.
It may have, because they're extremely effective within the film, but we see so many of them.
And they're not really effective afterwards, are they?
Yeah, so it's hard to tell whether that's a result of we've seen so much of them in this movie or just because the subsequent movies were badly done. Who knows? But either way, at this point, I feel like they're not particularly effective anymore. Which is it's a shame.
At least you've got the ones you've got, though.
Yeah, which is why I consider both Alien and Aliens to be incredible classics that still stand up today.
Right on. Laura,
Yes.
haven't heard from you for the last few minutes. Wanted to give you a chance to chime in on this topic or say anything else.
No, I will just say that I did like Alien versus Predator. Not necessarily because of story, because I don't think it was ever made to be a good story to tell. Like, it was definitely just your run-of-the-mill popcorn action flick. But I think by the time that we got it, after having a few missteps, I was just happy to have my Xenomorphs back.
Right on. Well, we're about 12 minutes past quitting time now, so I'm getting paid overtime, time and a half. So, but I don't really have anything else left to say. John, Laura, last chance.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, just gonna say I love this movie. It's still my second favorite after the original Alien, because I'm much more of a fan of that film's sort of disturbing creepiness, where you feel like you're about to be, that you've just got this tiny, I mean, it's not tiny, there's a big refinery attached to it, but they're in the ship. That's all that's standing between them and the cold, dark space. And for me, that's what's really frightening about that movie. It's not even the alien itself, but just the way that the pacing of the film takes its time, and it feels like something's crawling up the back of your neck the whole time. But that said, this film is an entirely different beast. It's just wall-to-wall fun and, suspenseful, and it's got to be for my money, one of the best sequels ever made. I think it's in a very select group there. I'm thinking, Empire Strikes Back. Yes. The Lord of the Rings sequels, which, depending on how you view those, because they were all shot at the same time. And I think, another one is probably Blade Runner 2049, which I think is funny because both that and this film are sequels to Ridley Scott movies. So, but yeah, this is one of those that I found myself able to watch over and over again, and it's just so much fun.
I hear you, Laura.
Yes.
I want to hear from you
about
about anything you have left to say. I get to talk to this guy every week.
I did see the question about rebooting the franchise. I know
Oh
that.
yeah, so we'll pop that up then.
But if I was asked, which I haven't been, but I'm just going to answer anyway. I wouldn't want to, just because I think what Ridley Scott and what James Cameron did with the first two was so iconic, that you're almost kind of just, I don't know. I just feel like those things are cash grabs, and you're crapping on the originality of just what was done, and it's a disservice to the actors, in my opinion, who put their heart and soul into creating these characters that we've come to know and love. So while I do like, my Xenomorphs, and I do like the whole Alien franchise and the story, I just wouldn't want to see a reboot happen, because I just don't think you can ever hit the mark of what those first two did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
John, I already know your answer. I know you're not a fan of remakes and reboots and all that.
Yeah, but it depends on what we're talking about. I mean, rebooting the entire franchise, no, not in a million years.
What if you keep Alien and Aliens and then go?
Yeah, I would legitimately like to see a very talented director take up the series, jumping off from Aliens. And because there was talk about that happening a couple of years ago. I think Neil Blomkamp was in discussions to do it, and then they dropped it once Ridley Scott started doing his prequels. But I would really like to see someone take that up, and if there has to be a large, time gap to, explain the ages of Sigourney Weaver and Michael Biehn, then, so be it. But I'd love to see, something picking up with those characters, as well as, maybe Carrie Henn could be persuaded to do, another movie.
Changed my thinking a little bit,
but yeah, it's that would be neat. That's the only way I would really want to do it.
Right on. Yeah. Okay. Cool. I kind of agree with you. Like, I like Alien. I like Aliens. I actually like Alien 3, but like, it's also because when I saw it, I had not seen the first ones in a long time. And as I said at the very beginning, it's never been my franchise. Like, I've enjoyed them, but I'm not into it the way you guys are. So it didn't hit me the same way. But like, I could see taking the story from where it is now and going from there. It'd be great. But yeah, I'm ready to end it here because I'm a smoker. You guys know this, and it is time. So that being said, John, you don't have anything next week, but you'll have something maybe the week after?
Yeah, I am still trying to figure out exactly what it is. I may have dropped a hint about one of the ideas I'm floating around earlier in the stream. So we'll see. Since I don't have anything stream-wise to talk about, I do want to do, I'm not being paid for this, but what the hell, I'll promote anyway. There are some excellent books out. Here's one of them called The Making of Alien.
Hold on, let me enlarge you. There you go.
It's a big, huge book with lots of behind the scenes material. It's by an author. His name is J.W. Rinsler. He's also done a bunch of behind the scenes making of books for the Star Wars trilogy. And this one's been out for a little bit. They just released this past week The Making of Aliens, which I haven't bought yet, but I will be soon. So I highly recommend those books if you're interested in the franchise.
Right on, right on. And Lee, thank you for linking the Alien stream over on John Webster Film.
Thank you.
You want to go, if you haven't seen that one, you should go watch John's stream with Carol. And come back next week we're going to be discussing season 1 of The Umbrella Academy. I thoroughly enjoyed the show. I watched all of season 1 and season 2 over the course of about 3 or 4 days. People told me to watch it for a year. I finally got around to it and just couldn't stop. Really thoroughly enjoyed it. So yeah, look forward to having Nessie back for that one next week. Laura.
Yes.
thank you so much for joining us. It was a true delight to have you.
Thank you for having me on. It was really just I was honored to be asked, and I had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, at the risk of embarrassing her, I just really happy, and not just because I knew you would love to talk about this movie, but guys, this is the first time I've actually seen Laura face to face since the last Con of Thrones. So that was another treat for me. So thank you so much for coming on.
I reciprocate that. It's very nice to see you. I'm sorry it couldn't happen this summer, but this has been very lovely for me as well.
Sorry, Mom. We'll talk. Mom wants to come on and talk about Umbrella Academy. Might do it. Don't tempt me. But and yes, it is 4:20 somewhere. Thank you, Wheezy. Knew we could count on you, official timekeeper of Here Be Dragons. So that being said, y'all, we ran a good bit over, but I also will say I thoroughly enjoyed this. I think there might be a Zoom call starting in our Slack group soon. So yeah, if you're in our Slack group, join us in the Zoom if you want. And if you're not in our Slack group, send me an email, and I will we'll get you in there. As I said, almost everyone is welcome. That almost is because, if you're an asshole, I'm just not gonna put up with it. So anyway, yeah, send me an email to we3dragons@gmail.com, which I am typing into the chat right there. Send me an email to that email address, and I'll get you in. But yeah, that's it. So until next week, you know what it is, everyone. Peace, and be excellent to each other.